Hey everybody, it's Lon.TV, and we're taking a look today at the GoPro Session, and this is a little mini version of the iconic action camera that I'm sure many of you are already familiar with. Now this video is being sponsored by Lumoid.com, and what they are is a try before you buy service. Actually a pretty good fit for our channel here, and what they do is allow you to rent items like this one. They also have some really nice high-end digital SLRs and other video cameras and camera lenses and all sorts of other good stuff too, like fitness trackers. You can try it out for a couple days, decide if you like it, and if you do, you can take 20% of your rental fee and apply that to the purchase of the item, either the used item that they send you as a rental, or you can send the rental back and get that discount against a brand new item. So you do have some options to buy a gently used item like this one, or go out and get a new version of the item that you rented. Really nice way to try before you buy, and that's why I figured they'd be a good fit for our channel here. You can use my coupon code Lon.TV and you'll get 15% off your first order, so definitely worth checking that out. And I have found, and I checked because they make the claim that their rental fees are the lowest out there, and I checked against a bunch of items today, against a few of the services that I have used in the past for camera lenses and other things, and they are in fact the lowest. So definitely check them out if you are interested in renting something like this, and do please thank them for supporting the channel. Now they let us borrow this camera, and the important thing to note is we've had no communication with GoPro on this, so all the opinions you're about to hear are still my own. The only thing Lumoid is reviewing on this video before it is posted is the accuracy of the advertising message I just delivered, but everything else you're hearing is not reviewed nor censored by anyone, and you will be getting the same objective review you always get from me. So let's take a look now and see what this camera is all about. I'm going to take it out of its little holder here. Now when you buy this thing at $200, I think they recently lowered the price on these. What you see here is all you get, really. They don't have any other kinds of mounts with it, and that's kind of the GoPro business model, is to make you buy a whole bunch of accessory items to actually mount it to things. So you do get this little setup here, but not much else, and there's a little frame that it goes in here to give it some protection. Now what's interesting about this camera is that unlike the other GoPro, it is born waterproof, so you don't have to put it in a waterproof housing. It already is waterproof, and what I like about that is that typically those waterproof housings kind of dampen the sound out a bit. You don't have that problem with this one because the camera itself is waterproof. I saw one of these from, I think, JVC that had a similar design, but it was a much larger camera, so this one is a lot smaller. Now you'll note here that the lens has a glass in front of it, and this looks like it's something you could probably replace later. I didn't see any replacement parts on GoPro's website. I didn't look that hard for it, but it looks like there is some protection of the lens with this glass layer here that will give you some added protection, but I'm sure you want to be careful about that. Now you can see it is very tiny. It's also very lightweight, so it weighs 2.6 ounces. That's 74 grams, just the camera portion. So if you are a drone operator or somebody that's looking for something really lightweight, this might get you there, but it's pretty solid. It feels like it's going to hold up, and it feels very rugged as well. And again, it's also waterproof to 33 feet or 10 meters, and you can get a feel for what kind of waterproofing they have with that little gasket here around the memory card area. It takes micro SD cards, class 10 or better. You can watch my SD card video to learn more about how those cards are numbered and what all those things mean, but you put the card in that way. A little bit hard sometimes to get it in and out, but it has a pretty good spring load on there. There's also a USB port that you use for charging, and it also allows you to transfer data. There is no replaceable battery on this one, but you do get about 90 minutes or so of recording, which isn't bad actually considering the size, but unlike other GoPros where you can swap the battery out, this one you can't swap the battery out. You have to recharge it when you are done. There's only two buttons on it. You've got one on the bottom here and one at the top. So we'll just turn on the camera real quick and you can see what goes on here. I found there's a pretty big delay between the time that you turn on the camera and it actually does something for you. So you'll see here you have some menus you can scroll through for camera settings, but I would actually recommend using the Wi-Fi feature and connecting it up with their app, which I'll show you a little bit later in the video. It's just a little bit easier to navigate through everything on here. There isn't much of a choice on video modes. You have 1080p 60, which is pretty much the setting I think most people will use. It will go up to 1440p, but that's kind of, not quite the 4K, so you'll get a little bit better than 1080 if you want to try to get a little bit more resolution out of it, but you won't get all that much. Now there are three different modes for the angle of the shot. So they have this super wide angle, which you'll see here, and you can see you get a pretty good wide range of coverage of the image that you're trying to take. They also have a wide shot, which will go in a little bit tighter, but still pretty wide. And then there is the mid shot, the medium shot, that will come in a little bit closer and be a little bit less of a fisheye. So I took the camera out over the weekend and took some footage with it, so you can see what the image quality looks like here. I did upload a separate playlist of 1080p 60 video as well as some 1440p video that I shot because I only shoot my reviews at 30 frames per second. So if you want to get a true out of the camera sample, definitely check out that playlist. You can see some videos that I shot with it, and I'm also overlaying 30 frames per second versions of those videos as I'm talking here, just so you can get a sense for it. Now, the one thing the camera lacks that I really wish it had is motion stabilization, because we're starting to see that now on a lot of smartphones. So like the iPhone has it both in software, and on their larger phones they even have an optical stabilizer that physically stabilizes the shot. And I'm not expecting optical stabilization on these cameras, but I think the sensors have gotten to the point where they could definitely make a go at digital stabilization that they're just not putting into these things, and you have to go out and buy a more expensive device to get it stable, like a gimbal or something like that. So it'd be nice to see some more, even just a little bit of motion stabilization will go a long way to making these images look better, especially when you have an action camera that's designed to be in action, attached to things, running around, and they really do give you a pretty bumpy ride when you're playing back the video. There are post-production tools that you can get, of course, to smooth out the video later, but if you're shooting at a higher resolution, to give you some leeway for that stabilization, on this camera 1440p is only at 30 frames per second, so you're not going to have the 1080p 60 quality that you would get when you push the final video out. So just one thing to keep in mind: if you want stabilization, you're not going to get it on this camera. There are other ones out there that do have it for around the same price or maybe a little bit more. But that's my major gripe with it. Otherwise, it's a pretty decent camera. I like the fact that they have a lot of pro controls built in, including the ability to shoot images in a very flat color, so it makes it easier to match up the color out of this camera with the other cameras you might be using on a professional shoot. There's white balance controls, exposure controls, a lot of those things you can get at through their app, which we're going to check out in a second. So there are some good things about what GoPro does, especially for professional videographers or aspiring amateurs like myself, to get their shots configured exactly the way they want it. So let's take a look now at the app and see how that interacts with this little device, and then we'll wrap things up. All right, here is the GoPro app running on my iPhone, and I'm very impressed with how nice the preview image is. It's certainly very compressed, but the frame rate is really good, and the updates from the camera are very quick as well. So you can see how long it takes for an image to make it over to the phone from the camera. So it's a very good way to get your shot set up, and you could probably make some exposure decisions off of here also. So pretty decent insofar as what you're getting back from the camera, and this is actually among the best I have seen from some of these camera apps. A lot of the other camcorder manufacturers really don't do this all that well, and GoPro seems to have a pretty good sense as to how things are working here. You'll notice a Wi-Fi indicator up there. That is the strength of the Wi-Fi signal from my phone to the camera, so you get a feel for how far away from the camera you can get when you're working on stuff here. I'll go into our settings on the side here with that little gear icon, and you can see what some of the things you can set on here. You can pretty much control the entire camera from here. You can even change the field of view, so we can go to that medium view, perhaps slip out of that, and you can see the difference that makes. And it's nice they show you the difference in the angle when it makes that switch as well. So I thought that was kind of a nice thing to see there. If you want to go into some of the pro settings, you can go in and do all the different white balance settings and everything else that you may want to configure the camera for. You have exposure compensation here as well. All sorts of stuff that you can really get into the nitty-gritty of your camera configuration as you're scrolling around in here. So a lot of detailed settings you can make on the camera, and it works pretty well. And of course, it also works as a remote control, so I can start recording just by pushing the record button down. Now, because we're at 1080p 60 when we did that record, we can't get a preview image while it's recording. I also found some glitchiness with the app in trying to get it to actually stop recording from the app. So it's not perfect, but it gets you there. One other neat thing about the camera is that when it goes upside down, it will right itself automatically. You can, of course, override that if you want, but if you're concerned that you didn't get it in the mount the right way, because it is a square camera, it has some ability to figure out what orientation it's in and get itself adjusted accordingly. And one thing that's cool about these GoPro cameras is that you can stream to services like Periscope from it. So as long as your phone is connected to the camera via Wi-Fi, you can then take the camera's image and audio and stream it out via Periscope and a few other live streaming providers out there. I'm sure that number will increase over time. So it's pretty cool to see GoPro starting to work with some of those other streaming services to extend some additional functionality out of the device. And that's something that GoPro brings, being a large camera maker in this space. So it's a pretty decent camera overall. I'm not crazy about the image quality. It's not the best, but it's decent enough for the form factor that you have here. I like the overall build quality of the camera. It feels very solid, rugged and metal with a nice rubber coating around it. Although I really wish it had a tripod mount on it. And that's something GoPro doesn't put on any of their cameras, I don't think. So you have to buy more accessories just to get it mounted on a tripod, which is crazy. It would have been nice to have a little tripod mount at the bottom here. Would have given me a little bit more flexibility for experimenting with it. So you do have to get some of those accessories in order to make this really work in the most flexible way, which of course brings up the cost quite a bit. But I do like the fact that this will work underwater without having to put it in in a housing first that muffles the audio. So if you're doing a lot of beach footage and you're frequently going from the beach to the water and back again, you don't lose audio quality when you do that, and you still have that protection of the waterproofing. So I thought that was a nice feature of this camera and something unique on this one that you won't see on other GoPro cameras. This is Lon.TV. Thanks for watching. This channel is brought to you by my Patreon supporters. If you want to help the channel, you can by contributing as little as $1 a month. Head over to Lon.TV/Patreon to learn more. And don't forget to subscribe. Visit Lon.TV/S.